And so begins the story of one of the most iconic science fiction heroes. But who is Flash Gordon?
Take yourselves back to the late 1920s, and you'll find a very different world from that of our 21st century Flash Gordon. Science fiction was in its infancy, and inspired by the novels of H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, writers had created characters that would invite their readers to open their minds to wild and exciting adventures.
There were a very flourishing line of science fiction pulp magazines, as they were called. And these pulps, which had titles such as Amazing Stories, introduced many of the famous characters of the first half of the 20th century. Tarzan started in a pulp. Buck Rogers started in a pulp.
Buck Rogers then appeared in newspaper strips in 1929, and Flash Gordon, which appeared in a Sunday newspaper 5 years later, was a direct attempt to kind of counter the popularity or spin off from that.
The reason that Alex Raymond was asked to devise a competitor to Buck Rogers was because newspapers in America were run by chains. So if one syndicate had a hit with a certain type of character, then another syndicate would say to one of its cartoonists, come up with a competitor. And so it was that Alex Raymond invented Flash Gordon.
Newspaper strips were very, very important because they could make or break a newspaper in terms of its popularity. If you could get a really popular strip, you could drive readers to the funnies.
In a way, the comic strips of the 1930s are like the television shows of now more than anything else, in that they're continuing adventures, they are endless, there is that mix of action and soap.
Alex Raymond was a giant of the comic strips. He invented Flash Gordon. He also invented a jungle character called Jungle Jim. He'd been asked to come up with an adventurer as well. And you look at the Alex Raymond comic strips from 1934 to 43, and they are like looking at beautiful paintings.
Alex Raymond was an extraordinarily sensuous cartoonist. I think that for many, the appeal of his strip was the near-naked women, and actually the near-naked men as well. Flash Gordon is always having his shirt ripped off, and there always seems to be an excuse to get Dale into the briefest, skimpiest of ritual Mongo outfits.
He's very good at observation in terms of human people and bodies and how they stand and how they move, so that there's a lot more sort of dynamism to the strip. He uses a technique called feathering, which is a shading technique of lines that gives everything a sort of solidity in 3 dimensions, so that everything becomes much more real. And also he uses something that's actually more striking of later sort of post-war comic strips, where the angles are all emphasized. So you're looking down on characters, you're looking up at characters, which makes everything much more exciting.
The people were actually taller than normal people would be. They had really long, attractive legs. The women were beautiful, the men were muscular, and he became interested in drawing exotic alien creatures, which was new for the comics.
Flash Gordon was an instant hit. Newspapers across America were distributing his adventures to their ever-hungry readers. His battles in outer space fed into the fevered frenzy of the science fiction craze of the 1930s.
I'm not entirely sure whether Alex Raymond set out to do a science fiction strip. I think he set out to do an exotic adventure strip. I think that Flash Gordon's peers are much more like Robin Hood, Tarzan, Zorro than H.G. Wells type science fiction. I don't think, there was an Arthur C. Clarke figure working with Raymond, telling him to make sure he got the scientific details right. Maybe Flash Gordon is the beginning of what we now think of as sci-fi.
It's ships that seem to travel instantaneously from one galaxy to another. It's robots, it's ray guns. It's almost like a western in outer space.
Unusually for a lot of science fiction of the time, Flash Gordon was set in the present day. And the exotic settings were on other planets. They were not on Earth. That's how it could be exotic and be in the present day. Other people had to be in the future to have exotic backgrounds. Flash just got into Dr. Zarkov's rocket, and that was his ticket to the future. Except the future was now somewhere else.
By 1936, 2 years into his reign, Flash's adventures in outer space caught the public's imagination. He was in the comic strips, on radio,
presenting the amazing interplanetary adventures of Flash Gordon.
and at the movies. But the stories that were told were never too taxing.
Here's the plot of Flash Gordon. Flash is in danger. That's it. The specifics can change infinitely. There are any number of dangers that he can be put into and any number of ways that he can, usually by his own efforts, escape.
Alex Raymond illustrated Flash Gordon from 1936 until 1943, when assistant Austin Briggs took over. His adventures across outer space continued over the next 60 years at the hands of a variety of artists. But if the storylines were lacking in any way, then it was the characters that Raymond created who made for such heroic long-standing.
It's strange somehow that Flash Gordon as a character caught on, because he's not that much. He is just a blonde guy.
I think he's a very sort of naive character. He's from the early 30s, so there's not a lot of character depth. He's basically a blonde, strapping man who fights evil, and that's it, really.
Flash Gordon is an all-American hero, but without any superpowers. He's a jock. Typically, the jock in high school isn't always a nice guy, but Flash is.
Well, that's something.
He's not witty, he's not smart, he's wholesome, he's good-hearted, and he's courageous, and he doesn't like injustice.
You are a brave enemy, Flash Gordon. Now let us become comrades in this common battle.
We need Flash Gordon because we feel secure. We feel that Flash can save us.
Flash, the course of this planet has been changed. The Earth will not be destroyed.
Ah, that's fine. Where's Dale?
He is really the standard basis upon which all heroes are built.
Flash Gordon is part of a kind of tradition, which is the strong man who exerts his will and gets things done.
I think the appeal with Flash Gordon was that he was human. He wasn't superpowered in any way, but despite being human, he was able to save planet Earth against evil aliens. And, you know, all aliens are evil.
No man can pit his strength against Kayla and live.
He's probably a bit more violent than we like our heroes to be, and we like violent heroes now. There is a sort of casual commitment to genocide in his attitude to some of the baddies on Mongo.
The one thing you can rely on Flash Gordon to do is to not really make anybody annoyed by his funny quips.
Sure this thing will work?
He's really very linear, you know. He wants to get the job done, and he's got this physicality that is so much part of his personality. I mean, if you take away Flash Gordon's physicality, his muscularity, his athleticism, then you have no Flash Gordon outside of the hair and the cute face.
It was that cute face and rippling muscles that kept Flash's unrequited love interest close at hand throughout his adventures.
Don't worry, Dale. Everything's all right.
Poor Dale Arden. Yes, she was the glamour, wasn't she?
Dale Arden is Flash's girlfriend.
Dale doesn't really do much other than just sort of stand around and act like a bunny boiler. He literally only has to look at another woman and she's giving him a sideways glance that could, you know, atrophy a walrus at 20 paces.
If he survives, he's mine.
Dale Arden, fit.
She spends a lot of time getting tied up, really, and captured.
Dale Arden was very much the symbol of American womanhood. You know, she was loyal, she gave Ming her word, she was going to stand by it.
She screams a lot. And that's about it, really.
She is, I'm afraid, the representative of the negative stereotype of the useless heroine who's always falling over and breaking her ankle and needing to be rescued.
But equally, she would go in there fearlessly, you know, she was a woman with guts.
Hey, I'm no wilting violet. I share the risks with you.
You always got the feeling that if it was a cat fight between her and Aura, it wouldn't be as foregone as you might imagine.
I won't put on these clothes.
And to make up the tireless threesome, who else but the original man in pants, scientist Dr. Hans Zarkov.
Dr. Zarkov speaking.
Dr. Hans Zarkov is a crazy scientist who no one will believe.
Zarkov is mad. His theory is fantastic.
He's the man who invents the rocket ship.
You know, Dr. Zarkov is the nerd that we all went to school with who really did well in science. And he's just wild imagination, and actually he's quite insane. He just loves science so much, he gets very excited.
I've discovered a new ray.
And he's got answers for everything.
It's a success.
And occasionally he doesn't, and he gets kind of shook up.
I will not rest until I get a message through.
Science has driven him insane because he's so into it.
I always have in my head that he was evil, but then it's like, well, no, he wasn't evil, he was good, because he wanted to save planet Earth.
Ming is brilliant as he is ruthless, but he can be beaten.
But there were times when he kind of like get easily hypnotized and then do things against Flash. And I think, you know, if you're inherently good, then you can't be hypnotized to do evil things. So with him, you know, it's kind of like, I don't trust him.
Despite the obvious 1930s yellow peril stereotype of the evil Chinaman, the dastardly villain of the Flash Gordon universe was, of course, Ming the Merciless of the planet Mongo.
Well, Ming the Merciless, of course, is the baddie.
Let the attack begin!
Nasty guy.
You are a tyrant.
Quite possibly one of the most evil, megalomaniacal, evil people to ever be registered in the register of evil, maniacal evilness.
I will conquer the sea, the air, the earth, the universe.
He is also Fu Manchu and Hitler rolled up in one.
Ming is the distilled version of the fear from without. But it's almost as if his cruelty is not our cruelty. His cruelty is from another world. He's so cruel, we can hardly grasp why he's like this.
Throw him into the arena.
But in fairness to Ming, he was an equal opportunities despot. He hated everybody.
Ming's the thing that makes Flash Gordon, because he's a really good baddie. You know, he's as good as Darth Vader. Well, what am I saying? Not quite as good as Darth Vader. But he's a really good baddie.
High priest, you know what to do. You mean the dehumanizer? Exactly.
Yeah, Ming may be merciless and a tyrant or whatever, but I'm sure the rocket ships run on time, you know, under him.
Flash will beat him purely, as I say, because he's an American polo player, and you just don't beat that, really.
And it was Flash's polo-playing charms that brought him to the notice of Ming's rather raunchy daughter, the Princess Aura.
I want the Earthman. Give him to me.
Ming is obviously mated with a woman of great conscience in one of his challengers. And this, through the universal laws, manifested itself in Aura.
Princess Aura is a bit of a saucy one.
Well, if Dale Arden was the all-American girl next door, then Princess Aura was the girl that everybody wanted to have living next door.
In old-fashioned morality, Dale is the kind of pretty Virginia, you know, nice one who can never do anything wrong. And the Princess Aura is the dirty one, basically, who Flash is tempted between.
Are you all right?
But she comes good in the end. She gets rid of her dad. She kills her dad, so, you know, that's good.
Princess Aura, I mean, I said, you know, Dale Arden, you know, is fit. Princess Aura is fit and dirty. Yeah. Yeah.
She wants Flash. She'd probably do Dale. She's basically the town bike. She's had everybody.
Princess Aura was an unusual character because she was Ming's daughter, but she didn't really like Ming, although she would often throw herself upon his mercy.
You must do something, Father.
She's quite devious and untrustworthy, and that's why she was interesting.
I will not tell you unless you decree that his life be spared.
All-woman, man-eater.
And no space adventure is truly authentic unless you have a character that can fly. And Flash Gordon had one of the best.
Prince Voltan is the head of the Hawkmen, who are one of the many races of Mongo. He starts out as a kind of barbarian thug who, like everybody else on Mongo, wants to marry Dale and kill Flash. But he sort of becomes a big ally of Flash's.
Flash, Where are you?
Big, hairy, and a great laugh.
In my head, Prince Voltan is Brian Blessed.
Hail Ming.
Voltan adores and loves life. His love of life and appetite for life is absolutely astronomical. It's astonishing. He is the most gorgeous, lovable creature.
You know, sure wish King Vulcan was head man around here.
That's who you want on your side. That's the kind of person you want that's got your back. Voltan, he's good.
For 70 years, Flash has been a fighter for good over evil in the comic strips. But it was his arrival on the big screen in 1936 that made him an international star. Well, Brian,
Don't go anywhere. Things are about to get exciting. Rocket ships and sparklers, high drama and high camp. And of course, me.
We're ringside for the start of the fight. In the good corner, the heroes fighting for justice, the fate of mankind, or to avenge a relative. And in the evil corner, the villains, looking to dominate the ring, the world, the galaxy at large.